Hey everybody, I am Benjamin Terry. I'm here at my studio in Dallas, Texas. I'm going to answer a few questions from Gallery Urbane leading up to my show called Done Being Cool, which opens November 16th. Done Being Cool stems from a conversation that I was having with a colleague of mine at UTA. I was just telling her how much I liked their work, how much it reminded me of things that I was doing, in my own work coming out of graduate school. It just has this kind of effortless, direct edginess about it. It's this kind of like clunky, haphazard, objecty painting thing. And I really love it in her work. I love it in other people's work. It just, I feel a real kinship to it. But I was telling her how I feel like I can't do it anymore. I've gotten too old. I've made those types of paintings a lot myself, and I've just sort of I get bored with my own thing. I know how my hands do it, and there's nothing new or interesting about it anymore. Um, and so it's done being cool is sort of this like reflection on where the work came from. It's sort of an acknowledgement of me getting older and the work progressing, and this little bit of an attitude shift in the work. It's almost like permission. It's almost just acknowledging where the work came from, but giving myself space to sort of just be authentically engaged in the things that I'm interested in right now in the studio, and being okay with that, not necessarily chasing something that was cool about the work before, or chasing something that's cool about what's going on in the art world right now, or chasing some sort of like fleeting trend, that's happening in the market. It's just acknowledgement and acceptance, and giving myself space to be authentically me and be okay with myself. I think the sort of major thing that feels different to me, and this is just something that's happened steadily, over time, over the last decade, um, is previously the soul of the work really happened during the construction of it. The like painted pieces of plywood were just sort of like spray painted flat kind of nothingness. It was just like getting color on a surface. They really didn't mean much of anything. There was nothing really inherently interesting about that part of it. But the interesting part came with me like cutting it up and getting this like jaggedy edge, getting sawdust into the wet paint and clamping it together while I was still sort of like skinning over and half wet, and then leaving clamp marks and peeling paint back. Um, you know, all of that stuff is what made the thing actually interesting. Was that sort of rough, fast, like incidental buildup of marks during the construction. That's where it found itself. And now it's like I know how those things happen, and I really resist them. Like I know how to keep a plywood edge from splintering when I cut into it. I know how to prevent the surface from getting marred up and gunked up when I'm clamping things together. There's just like a slowness and a precision in the work that's different, and the thing that makes the work click now in its current state is the like initial painted surfaces. The construction of it is still important, but that stuff is really like way more polished and finessed and locked in, and the painting part of it just is so much more important and significant. Like I care so much more about how color works, how this layering of a paint works, wet into wet, using a dry brush, big and small brushes, working from unsaturated to saturated and back and forth, and thinking about these really sort of painterly concerns. And I'm trying to preserve that. So there's like a slowness in the construction to preserve that painting moment. So it really feels like a big kind of shift and where the painting finds itself. I love that you call them orbs. I think that is magical and precious, and it makes them feel way more special than maybe they actually are. But for me, the sort of orb marks, at least the initial ones, were me sort of finding this moment within the painting that I didn't like, and I was just sort of trying to save it. I was like, I kind of had just these two marks that I was making originally. I was sort of doing these flicky kinds of marks, and then I was sort of shoving wet paint into wet paint and smearing it, just like a brushstroke. And there was some interaction that happened, and I didn't like it, and it was still kind of wet, and I was like, I'm just gonna like kind of scuff this out and erase it while it's still a little wet. And I really liked that mark that happened, so I did it again. But I was like, I'm gonna like actually get some paint on my brush and maybe build up this orby kind of mark. But really it was just sort of a system that happened because I was editing out something that I didn't like. And largely that's what a lot of I think the most kind of interesting parts of the painting is me editing out stuff that I don't like, this hard edge geometric stuff. That's always kind of been a part of the work, but more so than ever, it's like an opportunity for me to cut out something that I don't like in the painterly part and fill it in with that flat shape. And then, that also obviously provides this whole new system of like painting language for me to play off the painterly stuff. But it's me editing out stuff that I don't like. And that's why paintings have started to get stitched together. That's why it's just like, I hate this half of the painting, I chop it off. I hate this little moment, I'm going to cut it out. This is still wet, I don't like that, I'm going to scuff it out. So the orb is just one of the ways in which I'm sort of like editing my marks. The sort of stitching together of multiple paintings to make a new composition really is just a byproduct of how I've been working with this body of work. Usually I make one painting, I see it through, I get it fully built and constructed, it's done, it works, and I move on. And I don't revisit it, I don't sort of like go back to it, it's done. And I've always just made one painting at a time, but just sort of the speed of these painterly things, I paint for 2 or 3 hours. I have this sort of painted surface and I let it sit, I move it to the side. I'm working sort of intuitively in that moment, and it takes me like a day or two to sit with it and think about what's happening in the work. And so in the meantime, I make another painted surface, I do it again, I make another, and then all of a sudden I have 3 or 4 built up, and a lot of times they just don't work. Sometimes I'll sand it down and start over, but sometimes there's like, the half of this works, maybe I can do something with that. And there was just a moment where I had a couple of paintings sitting next to each other, that I had made a month ago, and I was like, something in the way that these work next to each other. So the most sort of obvious solution to me was just to cut one in half and splice it into the next painting, into the other painting. And that's just like the most obvious thing to me now. But it's great because it allows me to make paintings that I couldn't naturally make on my own, because these paintings, they almost like have a mind of their own. Like I have ideas going into them and things that I want to do, but there's like a little dance with me and painting. Painting has their thing that it does on the surface, and I have my thing, and we sort of compromise along the way. So it's a little out of my control, but once the paint is dry, it's set, then it's like, okay, now I'm back in charge here, and I can build and weave this thing together the way I want it to. So yeah, that's how it happened. And it's just an opportunity for me to edit sort of things that don't really work on their own, or something that gets charged differently when I put it up against something else.